Simon, when you were appointed as the new High Performance Director of Athletics Australia, what did you identify as the key priorities for the sport in this country?
Pretty quickly, from when I got here, it was obvious that communications needed to improve, tried to make our message clearer, and that there was actually one clear, consistent message of what we're doing. Really, those were the two things stood out.
And in your time here, what areas of progress in the high performance area have you been most pleased with?
I really enjoyed my tour of the country. I went and visited all the states, member associations, institutes. It was all new to me. I learned a lot from all those people, so that was a very useful process for me. And then since then, we've got out our NAS structure, National Athlete Support Structure, and very happy with the way that's gone. And our first selection of athletes, and now we're getting down to business. So those are the key things, I guess.
What areas of the Australian High Performance Program do you think still need a lot of work and require the most attention?
There's a huge job to be done in all sorts of different areas. The next immediate thing is we've picked our athletes onto the NAS system, and the next thing is for our athlete performance advisors to go around to speak to everybody and to make sure they're working on the gap to the podium, that they're really identifying what's their big issues for them to move themselves up to top 8 to medals and make sure they're addressing those issues. So that's next on the list.
And how did you rate the performance of the Australian team in Moscow at the World Championships and also in Lyon at the Para World Championships as well?
I went to both championships and were very well run. The staff were very professional, support staff was excellent, coaches were good, team spirit of all the athletes at both events was very good, so all of that was really pleasing. The superstars all delivered, which was great. The newbies actually did very well, and they delivered in general, which was good. There was a middle ground of athletes just below the medals at the Paralympics, just below top 8 at the World Championships in Moscow. And some of those guys underperformed, not all of them, but some of them underperformed, and they weren't as hungry or desperate as I expected. So that's a big area that needs improvement, and of course we just need more athletes at that level.
And there was some exceptional performances at the World Youth Championships as well this year. Who were the standouts for you, and who should the public be looking out for as the next generation of stars?
But there was 6 or 7 athletes there who did extremely well, who from my point of view got all the tools to go and produce as a senior. It's not fair on them to label anybody or to put pressure on them or to do any of the sort of things really. And it's our job to try and help them on the way through, but it's definitely an exciting time for that generation. Yeah.
Okay. The AIS's new Winning Edge strategy has obviously changed the landscape somewhat of Australian sport. How has it fundamentally changed the approach of the high performance program for Athletics Australia?
Difficult for me to comment on what Athletics Australia did before I arrived. Since we've been here, or since I've been here, absolutely for the Winning Edge stuff. The focus has got to be on Commonwealth Games 2014, winning the most medals we can there, top 5 nation at World Championships, top 5 nation at the Olympic Games, top 5 nation at the Paralympic Games. That's the focus. Everything has to be, does it contribute to that? If it doesn't, then it's somebody else's job to look after it. It needs to look after, but it's not our job in high performance. So that's the focus now. Whether that's a change or not for me to comment on really.
You mentioned the National Athlete Support Structure before. Is Athletics Australia actually funding more athletes this year than in previous years as a result of that structure?
I don't like the word funding. We're supporting many more athletes. We actually are giving dollar contracts out to many more athletes than before. So I think in the previous year maybe 20 athletes had a contract. This year we have 70 athletes we've offered contracts to across Olympic and Paralympic. We're massively upping the number of dollars which are going directly to athletes. But then that has to be supported by support services, coaching, facilities, all those sort of things as well, so that they're balanced up in the equation too.
There has been some criticism from a few individuals around the NAS allocations and some accomplished athletes with a good history. Is the NAS scheme designed around rewarding past performances or projecting forward to future performances?
Yeah, the whole thing is about what can we do that will increase our medals in Glasgow, 2014, Tokyo, in 2020, Rio in 2016. It's about the major championships and projecting forwards, right forwards, even 4-8 years. it's nothing to do with what people have done in the past. That's really good, that's great, it's fantastic achievements. But this programme is for helping to get people to perform in the future.
Can you take us briefly through the process that you undertook to assess all the people that applied for NAS support and how you arrived at the final list of those athletes that were supported through the program?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I did was got the AIS produce a set of statistics for us about genuinely what it takes to be on the right trajectory to get a medal top 8 in the future. We were able to do that for most of the able-bodied events. We're still working on it with Paralympic events. That gave us a set of standards we published out during the season. Anyone that got those standards was considered. Anyone did well at the Paralympics and got the IAAF, so IPC standards for that. Any outstanding juniors, that was a pot of athletes which we looked at. We gave us 208 names. So all 208 of those athletes got what's called an athlete capacity template, which is like a self-assessment form. They all got a self-assessment form for them to fill in with their coach, return to us. Independently, we filled in the same form about the same athlete with what we knew about them. So that gave us a lot of information about how athletes saw themselves, how we saw them. Then we also used the AIS statistics to track people's year-on-year progressions to see how they were moving towards those top 8s and medals. And then we formed a little selection committee, which is myself, the head coach, the Paralympic programme manager, the junior programme manager. We all had a vote. We got the chief medical officer in for any medical opinions and medical information, and then an independent observer, Chris Wardlaw, who was the referee, just to make sure that everything was above board and was all handled correctly. And then we sat down and went through every single athlete one at a time, considered their case, considered if they're going to be on NAS, and if they're on NAS, what level they're going to be at. So that was the process. It was a day locked in a darkened room.
And it seems as if there may have been some of the athletes that were formerly on AIS scholarships that may have felt that they didn't necessarily get the level that they'd hoped for around the funding. Was it realistic to expect that, given the fundamental shift in Australian sport and the way the whole landscape is operating now, that we could ever match that previous sort of funding around the AIS?
I think one of the big things that have changed is the focus is now on achieving the winning edge targets with that funding and not on just making teams. And we have people who are fantastic athletes, do incredibly well, represent the country extremely well, and they make teams, but they're not necessarily going to finish in top 8 or win medals. And that's a change for those people. And so I've got a lot of empathy for them. The landscape's changed for them, but it has changed, and that means that where the lines are drawn have changed. And in the past, maybe they were the right side of the line, somebody else fell off. Now they're the wrong side of the line, and they're the ones that's fallen off, and someone else stays in. But that's the nature of sport sometimes.
Is the funding pool for able-bodied athletes the same as for para-athletes? And if it's not, why is it different?
Okay, so our awards, fundamentally our sponsorship and our awards from our funding agencies and so on are much bigger for the Olympic side than for the Paralympic side, or the able-bodied side, I should say, really, Commonwealth and Olympics. And I think that's right. I'm comfortable with that in terms of the maturity of the sport and how long it's been around and the depth of the sport in some events. And that's reflected in the support we can give out to athletes. I think, in my mind, the level of dedication it takes to win a gold medal at the Paralympics is no different from the level of dedication it takes to win a medal at the Olympics or at the Commonwealth Games, and we're reflecting that in our funding as far as we can. As the sports mature, if our funding goes up, if the marketability of those areas goes up, or the public perception of those events goes up, we'll reflect that in all the award that we get and get more money out to those athletes in the Paralympic side.
You obviously spent a lot of time with UK athletics as a background before you came here. What lessons did you learn during your time there that you brought over to Australian athletics that you think apply to the sport here?
I don't think there's any lessons which were specific to me being in the UK as opposed to anywhere else. I've been in the sport of high performance athletics, track and field athletics for a long time now, and some of the big things which I've learned over the years is you need to prioritise athletes above everything else, and then you prioritise the coaching, and then the support services, particularly doctors, physiotherapists, strength and conditioning, and then the facilities, and then the competition structure. And everything that affects high performance athletes is in one of those bands and in that order, really. And then outside of that, the athletes who are desperate to do well are the ones who are most likely to do well. So we've got to encourage those people and actually maybe build that desperation into some athletes. And sometimes it's very easy to support people for their potential in the past. A few years ago they had fantastic potential, and they still have fantastic potential, but they've not converted that. And one of the lessons I've learned is the earlier you confront that and address it, the better for that person as a human being, and the better for the sport. So it's better to have those conversations realistically early and up front, because you can't have potential forever and not perform.
How do you build desperation into an athlete?
It helps if it's there to start with, obviously. And for athletics really appreciate having clear targets, clear things to achieve, what's the next step, what do I need to do, and to have clear benefits as they get each level on the way up, but also to make it clear that there's much less support, if any, on the way down. So as long as I keep climbing, everything's good for me. When I stop climbing, then there's no cushions, there's no parachutes, there's no safety for me. A colleague of mine used to say that athletes are at their best when they've got a knife at their throat. I'm not sure that's the level of desperation that I want, but that concept and the people that have that mentally anyway and holding their own knife there, those are the ones I want to help.
We actually asked some people through our social media channels to send in some questions, and we got a really good one from one of the fans, and that was that should Australia focus more on relays, given individual events are notoriously more competitive at major championships, and now that the IAAF has a World Relay Championship?
I'm not entirely sure that relays are any easier than individual events, because not so many countries compete in them, but the countries that do compete in them, they're very important for them, and they make huge investments into those events. So there's very few stones unturned in the relay world. Having said that, the programme is about medals and top eights, and every medal weighs the same. So a 100-metre medal is the same as a walks medal, the same as a relay medal. So of course we're going to support the relays, and it's an event area that Australia has fantastic history in, it's been very successful in, and I expect that to continue. So of course there's going to be relay programmes. Yeah.
Thank you very much.